That was the text. 5:52 in the morning. My sister's name on the screen, and under it, a photo that made my blood run cold. My 7-year-old twin nieces sitting alone at an airport departure gate. Purple backpacks in their laps. No adult anywhere in the frame. I was standing at the check-in counter at Logan Airport in Boston when I read it. Before I could even process the image, the airline agent in front of me delivered the first blow. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your ticket was canceled last night." My family had boarded without me. I thought that photo was the cruelest thing my sister would ever do to me. I was wrong. It took 8 long months for her to come back, stand in my kitchen, and ask for something so shameless that most people don't believe me when I tell them. But to understand the ending, you have to understand what she abandoned first. My name is Faith Ingram. I'm 34 years old, a pediatric nurse, and for most of my life, I was the easy child, the dependable one my mother never had to worry about. My older sister, Patricia, was the main event. Growing up, our mother used to brush Patricia's hair on the front porch where all the neighbors could see. 40 strokes every evening, a calculated performance. My hair was brushed at the kitchen table, fast and functional, right before school. When Patricia grew up and turned her life into a massive brand, the Hale Life, complete with 200,000 followers, and a custom kitchen built exclusively for photography, nobody in our family blinked. It was just the front porch all over again, only with better lighting. So, when Patricia planned a 10-day, all-expenses-paid family vacation to Florida and told me to leave my credit card at home, I believed her. That was our dynamic. I got to Logan Airport 3 hours early because that is who I am: punctual, cautious, organized. And that was when the agent told me my seat had been canceled the night before by the primary booking holder, Patricia. I called my sister. It went straight to voicemail. I called my mother. Voicemail again. Then, that cheerful text arrived like a doorbell ringing in an empty house. "You should be taking care of the kids." And the photo. My nieces, Sadie and Quinn, perched on hard vinyl airport seats, their small feet dangling far above the floor. Quinn had her thumb jammed into her mouth, a nervous habit she had quit 2 years prior. Suddenly, the airport loudspeaker called my name, instructing me to report immediately to airport security. When I arrived at the security office, the girls were sitting there, sharing a granola bar with a quiet state trooper standing guard by the door. Sadie was talking a mile a minute, narrating every tiny detail to anyone who would listen, her ultimate defense mechanism against absolute terror. Quinn said nothing. She just walked across the room and locked her small arms around my waist, burying her face in my sweater. An airline manager handed me an official note inside a clear plastic sleeve. It was written in Patricia's signature rounded handwriting. "Their aunt, Faith Ingram, will pick them up," with my phone number scribbled underneath like an afterthought. A gate agent had found the 7-year-olds sitting alone right where their mother had instructed them to wait, 20 minutes after final boarding had closed. "Where was that flight heading?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Miami," the agent replied, "and then connecting internationally." Nobody had mentioned an international flight. The trip was supposed to be a simple family getaway to Orlando. I signed the release paperwork and took my 2 traumatized nieces home in a taxi I could barely afford. Before that morning, I had a carefully planned life. I had worked 11 grueling years as a nurse, 6 of them on night shifts. I owned a modest condo in Dorchester that I loved with all my heart. And pinned to my refrigerator was a letter I had reread 200 times, an acceptance into a prestigious nurse practitioner master's program in Seattle. 6 years of strict saving. Classes were scheduled to start in 10 weeks, and I had an active countdown running on my phone. Instead, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I stood in my dim hallway surrounded by packed suitcases while 2 terrified little girls slept in my spare bed, made with tight hospital corners because my hands desperately needed something structured to do. I had to adapt instantly. Quinn couldn't fall asleep unless the hallway light remained bright, and her bed was pushed directly against her sister S. She dragged the mattress across the floor herself. Sadie developed her own tragic ritual. Every single evening, she packed her purple backpack, zipped it tight, and placed it neatly by my front door. Pajamas, a toothbrush, her stuffed rabbit, and a single juice box. "So we're ready when Mom comes back to get us," Sadie explained with heartbreaking clarity. I didn't have the heart to correct her. She was 7 years old, and hope was the only thing keeping her afloat. That purple backpack remained by my front door for 8 months. 4 nights after the airport incident, I opened Instagram and saw Patricia's story. Tiki torches, a glittering cocktail, and a sunset over an infinity pool. Her caption read, "Family time is everything." Down the hall, her abandoned daughter was sleeping beside a packed bag pointed at my front exit like a compass needle. This wasn't a moment of sudden panic. It was a cold, calculated itinerary. On day 6, a child protective caseworker named Marisol arrived at my door. The airport police report had triggered an automatic file for suspected child abandonment. She measured my spare room, observed Sadie calmly pouring cereal for Quinn, and offered a pragmatic piece of advice. Courts heavily favor family members with steady employment. "But tell me, has anyone in your family been contacted regarding the parents' finances?" "No," I answered. Marisol paused at the door. "Keep detailed records. Document everything." That night, I opened a black spiral notebook. As a nurse, charting facts was second nature, and charting became my form of survival. That weekend, I used a spare key to enter Patricia's sprawling home in Weston. The house looked immaculate from the outside, but inside, the truth was horrifying. The master closet was completely cleared out, not vacation empty, but entirely wiped clean. Winter coats were missing in the middle of June. The floor safe in her husband Derek's home office stood open and empty. On the kitchen island sat a massive pile of unread mail. Final default notices, a formal notice of mortgage acceleration, and credit card balances that exceeded my annual salary. Taped behind the front door wreath was a county legal notice dated 2 weeks before our scheduled trip. They had known all along. While Patricia was posting vacation countdowns on social media, her entire life was a sandcastle at high tide. Only the children's bedrooms remained untouched, beds neatly made, toothbrushes sitting in a whale-shaped cup. Every adult asset had been packed and smuggled out of the country. This wasn't a sudden flight. It was an evacuation, and the children were deliberately left off the manifest. When my mother finally returned 3 days later, having been lied to by Patricia that I had volunteered to babysit, I laid out the brutal evidence on my kitchen table. My mother instantly reached for comfort over reality. She panicked, "Faith, people do desperate things when they're stressed. Besides, you're built for this. You've always been the strong, independent one." There it was again, the porch, the hairbrush. I realized that night that if these girls were going to survive, I would have to protect them entirely on my own. A month later, 2 federal agents sat in my kitchen. Derek had once tried to recruit me into his real estate investment fund during a Thanksgiving dinner. When I had asked to see audited financial statements, he had laughed it off. The agents asked if anyone else in the family had invested. The next morning, my mother arrived in tears. She confessed that she had taken out a $180,000 equity loan against her fully paid-off home, the house my late father had spent his entire life working for, and wired it straight into Derek's fund. Patricia had arranged the meeting personally and explicitly warned my mother, "Don't tell Faith. She'll just overthink it and worry." My caution had been labeled as paranoia so they could manipulate our mother in peace. Shortly after, my family lawyer, Ruth, discovered a critical document. The private school tuition for the twins was paid directly from Derek's fund. And one of the primary authorized signers on that account wasn't Derek. It was Patricia. The wife who publicly claimed to know nothing about the business had direct financial control all along. On July 31st, at 11:41 p.m., 19 minutes before the hard deadline, I officially withdrew my enrollment from the master's program in Seattle. I lost my non-refundable deposit. I told no one for 3 days because I couldn't bear to justify my choice to anyone. I took the acceptance letter off my fridge and replaced it with a simple dental appointment reminder. I chose my nieces over my dream. In September, the federal indictment was officially unsealed. Derek and Patricia were named co-conspirators in a massive Ponzi scheme. Hale Coastal Partners had never purchased the real estate assets featured in their glossy brochures. New investor funds were used to pay fake returns to early investors, while millions were siphoned off to finance their luxury lifestyle, mansion, and Patricia's online brand. The list of victims included local blue-collar workers, retired teachers from my mother's church, and my own mother. That evening, Patricia's social media accounts disappeared. In November, Derek was arrested while trying to renew a visa on an island nation that refused to shelter federal fugitives. Their bank accounts were immediately frozen. Patricia went completely silent, but I knew her silence wasn't remorse. She was simply waiting to craft her next dramatic narrative. While their biological parents faced total ruin, Sadie and Quinn began to heal. Quinn announced she wanted to be a pediatric nurse for Halloween. Sadie dressed as an astronaut. In mid-November, Quinn stood up in front of her second-grade class, the very same girl who had hidden in a closet months earlier after a classmate called her mother a criminal, and held up a colorful drawing. "This is my Aunt Faith," Quinn announced proudly. "She helps sick kids at night. We live at her house now." The drawing depicted 3 stick figures standing outside a bright yellow house, labeled in crayon, "Aunt Faith's house." I pinned it to my refrigerator, right at the girl's eye level. In December, armed with 8 months of meticulously documented evidence, medical visits, therapy logs, report cards, and school forms, Ruth and I filed a legal petition for the complete termination of parental rights. In February, Patricia surrendered to authorities at Logan Airport after running completely out of untraceable cash. Released on bail with a heavy GPS ankle monitor strapped underneath her designer boots, she showed up unannounced at my apartment on a Sunday afternoon, while my mother had taken the girls out for lunch. Patricia walked into my kitchen as if she were stepping onto a studio set, scanning the room critically. Then, she sat down and made her pitch. She offered to sign full, uncontested legal consent for me to adopt the girls. No courtroom battle, no delay, under 2 non-negotiable conditions. First, I had to submit a sworn statement to federal prosecutors claiming the airport abandonment was merely a miscommunication. Second, she needed staged afternoon visitation, rights with the girls before her sentencing. "My criminal defense attorney says the sentencing judge needs to see a devoted mother," Patricia said coldly, sliding a pre-tabbed legal document across my table. I stared at the paper. I felt a brief wave of temptation. Signing meant instant, legal permanence for the children, ending all fear of future custody battles. But the cost was telling a monstrous lie and using 2 innocent children as props for a photo opportunity. I slowly pushed the document back across the table. "I will not lie to a federal prosecutor," I said firmly, "and I will never rent these children out for your camera. We will take the long road through court." Patricia's face twisted in rage. "Do you have any idea what prison will do to me?" she yelled. Before I could answer, the front door unlocked. My mother walked in with Sadie and Quinn. The girls froze in the doorway, their cheeks red from the cold air. Patricia immediately stood up, opening her arms wide for a dramatic reunion. Neither girl moved. Sadie reached out and took my hand, looking up at me calmly. "Is she staying for dinner, Aunt Faith?" It was not a question for a mother. It was a logistics inquiry directed at the person running the house. Then Quinn stepped forward. She looked directly at Patricia and said softly, but with complete certainty, "This is Aunt Faith's house." I watched the words hit my sister like a physical blow. Her eyes drifted to the refrigerator, to Quinn's drawing, and finally to the hallway where the purple backpack still stood near the door. For the first time in her life, Patricia realized that her control over the narrative was entirely gone. You were right about one thing, I told her quietly. Someone should be taking care of the kids. Patricia adjusted her hair, looked at her reflection in the dark kitchen window, and muttered. Mom always said people only love what they can see. She picked up her handbag, left the unsigned legal papers on my table, and walked out without looking back. I gave my full, truthful statement to the prosecutors. In April, Derek pleaded guilty to wire fraud and money laundering, receiving a 9-year federal prison sentence. In May, Patricia accepted a plea deal, 30 months in a federal correctional facility. Our parental termination hearing took place the following June. Ruth presented an indisputable wall of evidence: official police reports, financial records, proof of abandonment, and a full year of my daily documentation. Patricia did not contest it. The judge officially terminated the parental rights of both biological parents. My mother sold her large house in Quincy, downsized to a small apartment 2 miles from us, and began attending family dinners every Tuesday. She slowly learned how to love her granddaughters without demanding perfection. One evening, while helping me wash dishes, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. I saw you, Faith, she whispered softly. I just thought because you were easy, you were fine. I should have said it decades ago. I didn't make a scene. I simply refilled her cup of tea. The formal adoption was finalized late the following summer in a modest courtroom. The judge allowed Sadie to strike the official gavel to seal the ruling. When the judge asked Quinn if she understood what adoption meant, the little girl smiled and replied, "It means we already live where we belong." The night before the final court date, I walked past the girl's bedroom and saw Sadie quietly kneeling beside her dresser. Without any drama or tears, she was finally unpacking the purple backpack. She put her pajamas into the drawer, placed her stuffed rabbit on her bed pillow, and dropped the juice box into the recycling bin. She neatly folded the empty backpack flat and placed it on the top shelf of her closet. She turned around, saw me standing in the doorway, and asked, "What's for dinner, Aunt Faith?" "Tacos," I smiled. That was our entire celebration. Today, pinned to the center of my refrigerator, is a school picture. Quinn's shirt collar is slightly crooked, and Sadie is missing a front tooth, both of them caught laughing mid-frame because the photographer sneezed. It is unposed, unedited, and entirely real. By every standard my sister ever lived by, it is a terrible photograph. To me, it is the most valuable thing I will ever own. I spent 34 years believing that love was a constant debt you had to pay off through performance and perfection. It took 2 brave 7-year-olds and 1 empty purple backpack to teach me the ultimate truth. Real love never performs for an audience. It shows up on an ordinary Tuesday, sets the table, checks the homework, keeps the hallway light on, and stays. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of what truly matters in life, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you never miss an update. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to read them. Thank you for watching.